Hello, Library Media Specialist. This is Summer Perry. I am the supervisor of library and instructional resources at Fayette County Public Schools. And today we're going to be talking about weeding using data and how to let it go. So, the first point I really want to interject here is that school libraries are not meant to be museums. They are not meant to hold every single volume ever published or ever checked out in that school's history. So, we have to understand that school libraries are living, breathing things that change with the times and also change with our patrons, including our students and our staff. Now, we are librarians, so we love books, of course. But we do have to weed sometimes, and we have to understand that as the curators of relevant school libraries that this is going to have to happen. So we do it because number one, we want our collection to stay current. Our students and our staff deserve current resources that fit their information and reading needs. Number two, the collection is going to stay more relevant to your school population if you are consistently weeding and you are making sure that the books in your school library are matching the interests of your students and staff. And then finally, it's going to make the books that are there much more accessible. When we get the books that are not circulating off of the shelves, we then leave space to showcase and let those more current books shine. And it makes students a lot more excited to go browse shelves, and it makes browsing a lot easier. So it can encourage even more checkouts with a nice weed. And everyone says this, teachers, librarians alike. We love the books. We just can't bear to throw them out. And I get it. I understand. What we're trying to say here is that the book is not bad in and of itself, but it's just that for a purpose of a school library, we want to make sure that we are offering our patrons the best, the most current, the most relevant collection that we can. So, weeding is one of those necessary things that you are going to have to do periodically. It's not always easy to do that, but there are some ways you can mitigate the discomfort of having to throw away books, and we will talk about some of those a little bit later. So let's do this. There are a couple of steps that we're going to be talking about today when it comes to weeding, and we're going to go through each one of those. But I want you to take a look. This is by her choice. She is allowing me to share this. This is Miss Monica Sagasser's library shelves at LTMS. This is her second year at LTMS, and she has not been able to do a large weeding project just yet. So you're going to see this is her realistic section, has some lovely labels. She's got lots of books. I see some very clear spine labels, but there's a lot on the shelf. I am seeing a lot of spines, and I am thinking for a middle school student, a 11 through 13, 14-year old, this looks like a traditional library. And so we wanted to make sure that she had ways to make her collection more interesting for her students. So let's start with how we did that. First, you're going to decide your weeding parameters. There are lots of acronyms out there. CREW is one of them, and that is linked a little bit on some Fayette County guidance that you're going to see a little bit later. This one is from Jennifer Lagarde, the library girl, and she says to keep it fresh, and she has an acronym for that as well. There are some other parameters you could also follow. So this is a suggested collection goal for the libraries here in Fayette County. For a collection average age, a suggested goal is within the last 10 years. Specifically, if you have had a healthy budget and you are able to buy new texts, this will be easier than some other things. But nonetheless, a collection that is not over 10 years old is going to show that you have some current literature there for your students and your staff, and will make that a little bit more appealing to them. As far as diverse titles, we'd like to see 45% or more of your titles as diverse. We have heard that school libraries should be windows and mirrors and sliding doors. So there are different ways of getting various types of diversity into your library, but it does probably need to be intentional. And then finally, the goal for Fayette County libraries is that you have 15% or under of aged titles. Now, as far as the weeding suggestions for our FCPS libraries, when you go to set your parameters, which we'll do shortly, I do want you to look at circulation. This is the main function of a school library is getting books out there into the hands of students. So if these books are not circulating, they are not serving the purpose of your school library. If they have not had any circulation in the past 5 years, some schools do 6 years, then they are, for whatever reason, not attracting the attention of your students and staff. The next thing we're going to look for is the date that you acquired it. So if you have acquired it for it's been a while since you've acquired it and it still has not circulated, that may be another thing. Maybe it was just not a great choice at the time. Maybe it's something you've had for a really long time and you just haven't weeded in a while. So we're going to be looking at that. And then I want you to use a special eye towards your age Dewey categories. You can find that on your tidal wave analysis report, and it will give you a breakdown of the books that are aged in those particular Dewey categories. But again, if you are weeding periodically, I'd say once every year, every other year, then hopefully that is keeping some of your aged titles down. And Dewey nonfiction especially is important to keep more relevant because, well, we're talking about information here and it changes so often that we want to make sure we are providing relevant and current information. The next step of what we're going to do, we're going to be looking at the destiny report of a shelf list. Now, this does not sound like it's going to get us to a weeding list, but I promise you it will. Hang on with me and we will do this together. So once you're logged into Destiny at your school, in the reports section, you are going to go to the shelf list. Now, you can do a couple of different things here. For this particular shelf list, I'm going to use all ranges. That's going to give me everything in the collection. However, if you just say wanted to focus on nonfiction, you could use a range from 000 to 999, and that would give you only your Dewey numbers of nonfiction. Say that you wanted to just look at your easy books. You could do from E to E, and again, it's going to just give you the any books with that E call number. Now, we are going to count the circulations. I am going to go back in the last 5 years. So I'm going to start from May 1st, 2019. And if you leave this blank, it will have the current day. I'm going to leave date acquired blank, and I'm going to go ahead and leave all sublocations. Here I am going to show the publication year. I do want to see when various things were published. And then finally, instead of PDF, we're going to output as a Microsoft Excel. And we're going to run that report. Okay, and we are in our library reports job report manager. And you're going to see that the shelf list is now completed. We're going to go ahead and click View. That's going to download our shelf list, and we're going to go ahead and open that in Microsoft Excel. I now have my raw shelf list here opened in Microsoft Excel, and that's going to lead us to our next step. And our next step is going to be filtering the spreadsheet that we just created with that shelf list. So a few things, we're going to be using filters today. We are going to display, then remove, first of all, our ebooks and e-audio. We're going to remove any books that are lost or checked out. Then any books that have circulated. So you can choose, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in that step. And then finally, we are going to remove any books that you have acquired within the past 5 years. And this will then get us to arrive at our final weeding list. So let's go back and look at the spreadsheet. Okay, so I'm going to make our spreadsheet a little bit easier to view. I'm going to highlight all my columns. Some people prefer to fit it to the column. Some people are going to use this column width. I'm going to just change that to just, let's say 15, just so we get it a little bit more spaced out right now. I am going to give this C column a little bit more room with our title here. So I'm going to spread that out. And I am now ready to start our filter. So to set up a filter, I am going to go and I'm going to click in row 1. I am then going to go to data and I am going to use filter. What that does, you're going to see these little arrows that have now popped up in every single column. We're going to use some criteria here to make it a little bit easier to sort through all of this fun. So the first thing I am going to sort out are all of our ebooks and e-audio. This is going to be in your call number. I'm going to click my arrow. And for this particular case, I am going to use the search and search for ebook. We then see that all of these things selected are all ebooks. So once I have that, they're still checked. I'm going to push OK. So now what this is doing, this is showing me my spreadsheet with only the ebooks filtered out. Well, we don't really weed ebooks. They are not sitting there on the shelf. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start here and I am going to highlight all of these rows. And once I am done highlighting all of these rows, I am going to right click and I am going to push delete row. So what that essentially did is it filtered out our ebooks and then let me delete them from our entire spreadsheet. Now I want to clear my filter. So I'm going to go back to the little filter and I'm going to push this clear filter from call number. Now, if I were to look, my list is now back where it was. The other thing I want to sort out very quickly is any e-audio. And you can see there's a few e-audios. I'm going to make sure I get that list. I'm going to go here. I'm going to select all my rows of e-audio. And then once I have my audio rows selected, I am going to right click and I am going to delete those rows. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to clear that filter. So now I have a weeding list and it does not include any audiobooks. The next thing I'm going to look for is the status. If a book is lost or checked out, I'm not going to be able to find it to weed anyway. So I am going to go here to status and I am going to uncheck anything that's available. So now I am getting anything that's checked out, in transit, lost, on hold. I am leaving that in the filter that I'm about to see. So I'm going to push OK. And anything that is now on this filter, I am going to go ahead and select all of those rows. And then I'm going to right click and I am going to delete those. And once we have those deleted, we're going to come here and we're going to clear that filter. Next, we are going to go over here to our circulations, and I'm going to want to see anything that has circulated. In this case, I'm going to count one circulation as proof that it has circulated. So I'm going to uncheck 0, and I'm going to see everything that has circulated within that's a 5-year time frame. And if it has circulated within that 5 years, I'm going to go ahead and get that taken off. And again, I've got all of those now that have circulated highlighted. I'm going to right click and I'm going to delete the rows. And then I'm going to clear that filter. We are on our last filter, friends, and now I am going to look at the filter for the date acquired. If it was acquired, sorry, within these last 5 years, I'm going to want to see that. So I'm going to unselect by choosing that. And then I'm going to make sure I see everything from the past 5 years. So I'm going to say 2019, 2020, 21, 22, 23, and 24. And now what I'm going to do, I am going to highlight that list. And I am going to right click and delete those rows. And once those rows are deleted, I am then going to clear that filter. And what I have now have left is the list of items to be weeded from my library. Now you can sort even further if you wanted to. See here in sublocation, there are some things for Spanish. So say that you wanted to make sure to keep all your Spanish books. You could then use a sublocation and sort out all of your Spanish and take those off of your weeding list. But essentially what we have here is a weeding list to go ahead and visit our shelves and start finding. So that is going to be our next step. And the next step, my friends, is a little bit of blood, sweat, and tears and heavy lifting. So this is where you actually go to your shelf area, find the books that you are wanting to remove from your library's collection, and go ahead and start getting those together. Once you do have those together, you are going to want to do a few things. In Destiny, you are going to go into your catalog and you're going to do your update copies, and within you're going to delete individual copies. I have now turned off where you do not have to put a reason as to why it is being deleted, but you do want to leave your track as weeded checked. You're going to then go through and delete by using the barcode those individual copies. Now, there's a couple of things here, caveats that you want to follow. If you are deciding that that book is a popular book and you're weeding it because you have 5 of it and 2 of them were on the weed list, so you went ahead and pulled the 2 but left the 3, that's fine. However, if you decide that you want to give that book because it's so popular to students, what you're going to need to do is cross out that barcode. We do not want books coming back to our libraries and giving extra work for us in that particular manner. So if you are going to give it away, you do need to take off any library information or cross out barcodes completely so that you can know by sight that that book is a weeded book. What I mostly suggest for the majority of your weeded books, though, is that you go ahead and pack them in boxes and then that you clearly label those boxes. And it will say discarded library books and it will be sent to the warehouse. What you're going to do then, either you, if you have access, or your principal in charge of buildings and grounds, is going to put in a Facilitron Works work order that asks the warehouse to have these boxes of discarded books picked up. You want to estimate around how many boxes. So, say you have 20 boxes to be picked up, and then you want to say exactly where those boxes are located. So, you might say they are to the right, just inside the library doors, or in the hallway right outside of the library. Whatever best describes where you have been able to stack up your boxes of discarded books. And now, friends, we are at the time where you really do have to let them go. So once you get into this process, you're going to see couple of things. You're going to see some shelf space start to free up. Your shelves are going to look a little bit more vibrant. You're going to notice that the books that tend to circulate more often are now more noticeable. So sometimes this is a little bit easier once you see the results of weeding, but you do have to let the books go. And it is okay. Again, we're not saying that they are bad books. We are just saying that they're not fitting our collection for our current student population. It is okay to do this, friends. It is okay, and it's going to help you have a more relevant, more current library in the end. So I promise you it's worth it. One of the more satisfying things that I then love to do is go into Tidal Wave or through Destiny and run collection analysis immediately. So I love to compare the analysis of what it looked like before with what it looked like after. So our friend Monica here, you can see at LTMS, after her weed, which yes, took out just under 4,000 books, but it raised her average age by 3 years. And she can now has a lot more shelf space and more current collection to be able to offer her students and staff. So you can now see that same section of realistic fiction. Now we have some outward facing books that are going to be a little bit more enticing for students to browse. We have a little bit more, like I said, breathing room. You can actually see the wall behind. It looks a little bit brighter. And then what Monica had us do, she had us clear that bottom shelf. I dreaded that bottom shelf where students would hardly pick from, and it would get super duper dusty down there. So she had us clear out that bottom shelf. You can then use it for forward facing displays. You could put something colorful down there. You could use it to display student artwork. There could be numerous kinds of things that you could do there to add a little bit of pizzazz to your collection. And then look at how happy Monica is with her newfound space. She was able to use some of the space created by her weeding project to create new sections that she thought would be of more interest to her students. So we have to keep the end result in mind, and then we have to really think, what are we going to do with this space? Like, I'm going to have some opportunities that I would not if it were filled with books. And again, we're not saying that the books are bad, but we want to make sure that the books that we have are interesting to our students. Here are a couple of resources that you can use from Jennifer Lagarde, the library girl. She has her blog post about how to keep your library collection smelling fresh. And by Kelsey Bogan, another favorite, she has a blog about weeding for equity, accessibility, and relevancy. And then for Fayette County, we just have a kind of a quick document, if you will, about weeding with the shelf list. It helps you use that data. And it also walks through in writing the various filters that you use if you needed a little bit of extra help in filtering your spreadsheet. And again, it is hard work, but I know that you can do this. And like Elsa said, you can let it go. Thank you all so much for listening today. I hope this is helping you become better weeders in your library. Take care.